Britain, England, gentle rolling countryside, peaceful rural tranquility, and on fire if we don't do something about our CO2 emissions. So maybe I should introduce the characters of today's story. This is Candy. She's a 1999 Smart ForTwo Pulse. And this is Zoe. She's a 2022 Renault Zoe ZE50. So a car that's less than a year old versus a car that's 24 years old. Why would I compare these two? Well, this Smart ForTwo has an interesting characteristic which I think it's worth comparing. You see, Candy, being an old Smart ForTwo, has the small original petrol tank of only 20 litres. And a 20-litre petrol tank on Candy gives her an average range of about 235 miles on a refill. Zoe has a 52 kilowatt-hour battery, and her average range is going to be about 200 miles across the year, up to about something like 220, 230 in the summer. And therefore I think it's an interesting comparison, because I've had Candy for a very long time, and I know that 235 mile range has never really given me a problem, and therefore I can be confident that Zoe's range, limited at about 200 miles on average, is not going to be a problem either. Now, as I compare these two, it's worth bearing in mind that Zoe is quite an old design. The Zoe came out in 2013, and although it's been much improved over its lifetime, this has a relatively small battery in comparison to some of the other EVs. Whilst she is much improved, she's no longer class leading. Let's think about running costs of the two. To refuel Candy with a 20-litre petrol tank at £1.43 a litre costs about £29. To refuel Zoe with a 200-mile range 52 kilowatt-hour battery at about 34 pence per kilowatt-hour, the UK cap at the moment, is about £19, so about £10 less. When it comes to servicing, main dealer servicing on Candy is about £500 now, whereas on Zoe, because she's simpler, is only about £190. This year, the road tax on Candy will be £200, whereas there is no road tax on EVs until April 2025. If I want to take Candy into an ultra-low emission zone, then I'm going to have to pay for her because of her emissions. Whereas EVs can go in any ultra-low emission zone because there's no emissions at all. And similarly with the congestion charge, I would have to pay to take Candy into the centre of London, whereas an EV can go in for just a £10 registration charge per year. The drivetrain of these two cars is very different. Candy is a petrol engine, 599cc turbocharged. She's good fun. However, Zoe is much more powerful and much quieter and has a much smoother power delivery. There's no peaks and troughs like there is with Candy. Candy, you see, needs a 6-speed gearbox in order to get the best out of her engine. Zoe doesn't need a gearbox because she's so torquey that she has more torque than Candy will ever have right from the get-go, right from a standing start. And that means, although Candy has a semi-automatic gearbox that's being operated for you to make driving in traffic easier, Zoe is also easy because she's also a 2-pedal car. There's no clutch to operate in any EV, whereas in some internal combustion engine cars you're going to have to be pumping the clutch when you're sat in traffic. But there's another benefit to electric vehicles as well, which is regen braking. Candy, because she has a manual gearbox that's being operated automatically, the gears are always engaged unless you're stationary, and therefore you get engine braking, which I really like. But Zoe gives much more of the equivalent of engine braking in terms of regenerative braking. You see, Candy, the best she can do is she can use new petrol when she's on overrun, whereas Zoe can actually regenerate energy and put it back into the battery. So why did I buy a Smart? It sounds like they're no good. Well, in fact, in her day, she was very clever. This is a small, light and efficient car, and I really appreciated that. That's what I was looking for. I wanted to minimise my use of the world's resources, and Candy was capable of doing that because she was quite small and quite light. She has a good fuel economy. She does about 53.5 miles per gallon on average, and that's measured over the last 7 years, despite the fact that she's got 66,000 miles on her now. But Zoe can beat that because she's doing 4.3 miles per kilowatt hour at the moment. That's at the beginning of May. And that means that she's doing an equivalent of 180 miles per gallon. 180 miles per gallon. That's 3 times better than even Candy can do. Don't worry, Candy's not going anywhere. I'll be keeping her. But I will be retiring her to an easier life. Zoe will be taking over the daily grind because she's better at it, because all EVs are better at the daily grind. You see, we would love to believe that driving is all open roads and freedom and easy driving, and yet the reality is that there's traffic everywhere, and EVs are better in traffic as well as being better even on the open road. EVs are generally better than ICE cars by most measures. They better suit the real-world driving we encounter every day. They're quieter, they're smoother, and they're easy to drive. They're cheaper to run. There's no tailpipe emissions, and the technology is getting really good now. What I recommend to you is that you get more informed about EVs. You find out about the latest EVs and what they're capable of doing. You need to try a modern EV, try hiring one or borrowing one, and seeing for yourself whether the things you think are a problem really are a problem, because I don't think they are. Try not to believe the misinformation you might hear. That's for another video. But I think you won't understand the benefits of EVs until you try one, so I suggest you do. Now, if you think I've missed anything, by all means jump into the comments and tell me what you think I've missed, or ask any questions you might have. Thanks for joining me. More videos coming.